childhood and primary. I taught for 2 years in Australia and then moved over to the UK and was teaching computing and then leading on digital learning. So excited to be here. Obviously, I've got a few externals as well. So thank you for joining us for tonight's webinar on Classroom. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. So today's sort of going to be a bit of an interesting one because I'll sort of take you through Classroom but sort of look at it from more of an assessment side rather than simply just how you get started on setting up for the first time. Can you all just mute your mics? I'm just getting quite a bit of feedback. So I'll just go and mute if that's okay. Perfect. Let's jump into this one. So feel free to join the Classroom if you want to, so that you can sort of join in with what I'm doing. I will pop that into the chat for you all. If you're outside the outside Leo, you probably won't be able to join the Classroom, so you can just sort of follow along with what's happening. But that is the code and it is in the chat, so you've got access to that as well. So just a little bit briefly about Classroom. So you have the stream here, and that essentially works like Facebook or Twitter stream, so it's constantly being updated. And there are a couple of things just in terms of management and organization. So I'm just going to do welcome. Please introduce which year you teach. And I'm just going to post that in the stream so you can start to pop your things in if you've joined the class. But just worth noting that within the settings within Classroom, that you can actually manage the sort of flow of the stream by using the options here, so that either only teachers can post or comment. This is a really helpful way to sort of streamline what actually appears in that stream. You can also set it so only students can comment. This is also a really helpful way, especially if you're getting started using it with your learners for the first time. You might like to limit it that way. Otherwise, they can post and comment. And this is obviously one to sort of open up once the students are sort of familiar in using it and can sort of manage it. It's also worth noting as well that you can hide classwork on the stream. So your classwork, if you're new to Classroom, classwork is where you set all of your assignments, post any lesson material. So at the moment, it's got it on condensed notifications. What this means is it essentially collapses the notification post into a smaller version, which means that often sort of in primary, one of the things that I often found is that my pupils never clicked on it, so they didn't really know what they had to do for the task. They sort of just saw complete this and didn't actually read the instructions. So I'd either recommend having show attachment and details, so that when those assignments do come through the stream, they will always see those in full detail. Otherwise, you can hide those notifications, and that means that you just then direct your pupils to always go to the classwork tab rather than to view the stream. So the stream then is only there for notifications or key points to remember there. So that's sort of the key thing to remember. You'll notice as well, because this is sort of a marking assessment focus for tonight's Classroom webinar, is that you can actually go in and customize your marking calculations. So if you are choosing to put marks in as you mark work, you can actually either mark it by points and you can show that overall mark to them, but you can also put in weighted by category. And then you can add categories in. So you might say for quizzes, you're going to give them a percentage of their mark. So that's basically how that works there, if you're wondering. So I'm going to jump out and just come back in so I can see someone's jumped on that stream already, which is fantastic. One of the things that I will recommend within classwork is always setting up topics. So if you're new to Classroom and haven't been using it, I'd always recommend to set up topics so that they're ready to go. And you can either group these by weeks so that it's easy to sort of manage, or equally you could do it by topic as well. So for example, I'm struggling for ideas today, so I'm just going to go with my classic fallback of a water cycle, and I might even go in and put in resources, and I might do to read, and I might have that so it's at the top. Oh, let's try that again. So I can easily drag and reposition them. So I might always have to read at the top, and then I'll have my week 1, and then, you know, maybe another unit underneath, and then any resources as well. Now, the reason I do my topics first is that any assignments that I set, the organization is already there, and it just makes that workflow much easier to be able to manage. As well, you'll notice that within Create, this is where you'd go in to set any assignments up. So I'm going to go through just briefly setting up an assignment, and then going to look at rubrics. So for this one, I'm going to do create a slide presentation. And actually, before I do that, I will sort of mention with any assignments that you create, one of the problems that we often see is that after teachers have been using Classroom for quite some time, is that they end up having all of these titles for their different assignments, and it's hard to sort of navigate between, especially for children, to find which was the first assignment that they were looking at, or if a teacher says, I want you to go back to the second assignment that we did, they can't find those. So actually starting off the title with a hashtag and the number is a really helpful way to quickly identify them, and as well to be able to shuffle them around. So I can quickly put that in. So create a slide presentation about Italy. And then I can put my instructions in. So after viewing the Italy tour, please create a slide presentation with all of your facts and information. So then I'm simply going to set up a Google slide to put in for them. And I'm actually not going to do any work at all. So it will automatically start up with a new one, but I'm simply going to close that for the moment. And what I want to do is I want to make a copy for each student. So this essentially becomes my photocopier, which means that I don't have to go and sit there and create 30 different presentations. I can simply use make a copy for each student. And what that will do is it'll then rename this Google slide with their name, and then whatever I refer to it as. So if I went into that presentation and renamed it, then it's going to be their name followed by whatever it's called. But I'm just going to leave it blank. You'll notice on the right here a couple of things that I can do. So I can set this up for multiple classes. So if I'm teaching across different subjects and I have different subjects for my classrooms, then I can do that. And I can also set it up for specific students as well. So this is a really handy way to be able to differentiate for set students within a class, which is a really helpful thing to be able to do there. You'll see that you can set the amount of points that this is worth. So it might be over 80. I'm just going to leave it as 100. I could also leave it unmarked as well if I wanted to. So if I didn't want to focus on the point value, then I can leave it unmarked. And then I can set a due date. So I'm going to be generous and say it will be due next Friday. And then this is where I can bring in those topics. So I'm going to do week 1 here. And then at this point, what I'm going to go into is rubrics. But just before I do, I'm just going to check that there's no questions. So feel free to drop any questions that you have in the chat so that I can sort of keep up with those as they come through. Just going to go like that. So in Rubrics, for those that don't know what that is Rubrics are essentially like a marking scheme or your success criteria that you share with your learners, and it helps them understand exactly what it is that they're required to do when they complete the task. So I find as a teacher that they're a really helpful way, especially with younger learners, where they'll often ask, how many slides do I need to create? How many photos do I need to include? So you can make this really specific, or you can make it quite limited. When you tap on Rubric, you'll get 3 options. So you can either create a new rubric, which is what I'm going to do. I could reuse a rubric. So if I've got one set up for another class, I could simply tap onto that and select another class and use that same one. So this is really helpful to be able to share rubrics across schools or across classes. All you need to do for that is to make sure that all of your teachers are set up in one Google Classroom, and then you can reuse any rubrics there. The import sheets is a fantastic way. So if I create an excellent rubric, then I can export it and share it with you all. And then you could go and tap import from sheets and add that on. So I'm going to go in and create a rubric from scratch so that you can see how it actually works. So you'll see here, I've got the option to add the criteria. It's worth noting that up the top here, if I want to delete anything, I can do that as well. So you'll notice that underneath I've got the title, the description that I'm going to give, and then I've got points, title, and description. So I can turn off scoring. What that'll mean is it'll take away that points value. So for example, maybe I just want to use beginning. I might do at level and exceeding. And then I'm going to give the criterion title. So because it's nighttime and my brain is definitely struggling, I thought that I'd quickly find a rubric that I could use. So I thought I'd go with adding a new slide. So that's going to be my title up here. And then I'm going to put, I'm going to leave my description blank at the top there, but I can simply start. And let's just make a copy of this quickly. So again, if you've already got a rubric, you've got your success criteria already mapped out, then you can equally just go in and copy that information and paste it straight in like so. So this is a really helpful way just to speed things up rather than sit there and type it. So I've got adding a new slide, and then I've got my criteria. So a new slide hasn't been added, a new slide has been added and a title has been given, and then a new slide has been added and a title has been given to it. Some text has been added, but not in a complete sentence. And I might even add in another level and say accomplished. And then I might put in a new slide. So I might say for this one, multiple slides have been added. There is a title, theme, and photos included. And then you'll notice that once I come down, that I can simply add in another criteria level, and again, do exactly the same thing. So I can put in, so if I wanted to, I can actually set up another one. I'm just going to go with the one for mine. So this is essentially just being my set criteria for the slides. I'm not going to do anything more than that. I just simply, because I've tapped on that one, I just need to delete this one. You'll notice that in that top right corner that I can duplicate this. So this is a really helpful way to just sort of streamline the process. So for example, I might duplicate it and then just change this to adding in images, and I might say multiple images have been added, and I can go and just sort of tweak that criteria as and when needed. And then I can simply just tap on save in that top right corner, and you'll see that I now have that rubric sitting here, and I can tap on to view it. So this is exactly what my learners will see when they go on to complete their assignment as well. And if I wanted to, I should mention whilst I am in this screen, if I wanted to export this, I could simply tap on the traffic lights here and tap on export to sheets. And this is then going to export this rubric into a spreadsheet that I can then share. So I could then quickly share this with you all, and you'd be able to do exactly the same thing within your own classroom there. So I'm just going to close that for now and let that go. And then all I'm going to do is assign this. Now, because I might want to assign it now, or I might want to schedule it for later, I've got that option there. So all you need to do again is just tap on that little drop down, and you've got the ability to schedule it for a later time. So if it's a different date or a different time, I can do that there. I've also got the option to save as draft. This is really helpful if you know that you want to go back to an assignment and make any changes prior to sort of scheduling it. And assign. So assign will just post it straight away. And we'll just give it a moment. So you'll notice now that that assignment is in there, ready to go. So I can quickly tap onto it and then view that assignment. And you'll notice that when I go in, I've got my student work tab, and this is where I can actually go in and see as my students work on those assignments there. So I can actually open it up. And when I do open it up, you'll notice that as a teacher, I get this side panel here. And this is really helpful in terms of my marking, assessment, and feedback workflow. So a couple of things to mention is that I've obviously got my initial mark. So I could obviously go in and pop that in straight away. So I might say they haven't started the assignment yet, so I'm just going to give them an immediate 0 and return it with a private comment. So I could do that, but otherwise I might like to be a little bit more specific as I set that task. So one of the things that I'll often do is, because this panel on the right here is more a sort of the final task. So once a child's finished the work completely, that's what I'd go on to use once they've finished. So one of the things that I often will do is actually just use a comment in line with the work. And this is exactly the same whether it's in docs or slides. And I could go in and simply write, it looks like you haven't had a chance to start your assignment yet. Can I help in any way? And I could just go ahead and leave that comment there, and hopefully Lizette will go back through and check what needs to be done for the task, and maybe respond to my comment there. But I know that I've probably, whilst I don't hear, I'd usually have more pupils in my class here, and I'd be easily able to switch between them. So that's always really helpful to know, is that I can actually just quickly switch between assignments, just simply tapping on their name. So I don't have to go back to this page here. I can simply do it all from that one section. And you'll have seen that I wrote that entire comment there. But what I might have decided to do instead is to use the extension moat. Now, this allows me to do a 60-second voice comment. So it just means it's a huge time saver. I don't need to sit there and just write a comment that maybe children won't even read over. So I can simply tap onto that. And then you'll see that when I tap on, it'll say start recording, and it'll transcribe what I say. It looks like you haven't had a chance to start your assignment yet. Can I help you in any way? Do you know what you need to do to get this assignment completed? And that'll say thinking, and then in a moment that will then have 2 options. So you'll see here that it says click to read, click to hear or read my voice note. If I just tap on reply, you'll notice that it has added it in there. So it's transcribed what I've said, but I can also go ahead and tap on play. and that's going to then play back my transcribe there as well. So that's really helpful to be able to do that as a way to sort of streamline the way that you feedback to your learners as well. One of the things that I'm also going to mention is that just underneath the files grading system that you've got, you have a comment bank. And you'll see here that I've started to populate some comments that I know that I'm probably going to use quite often. Again, I could simply use this one, as I know that this is probably something that's going to happen to my learners once in a while. So I could use the add to bank option, and I could paste in this comment. Now, if I have a bank of comments that I regularly use, for example, well done, this looks fantastic. I wonder if you could, have you thought about including some images? So as long as I put each one on a new line, that will actually generate each one as its own separate comment. Now remember, these only have to be they could be a whole comment that you use, but they could also just be a starter. For example, this one here, I wonder if you could. So I'm not actually going to finish it because I want to keep that open as a prompt so that I can actually use that to save myself just that little bit of time. So we always know as teachers that you are always struggling with time. And then what I can do is I can then just simply call upon what it is by using a keyword. So for example, done is going to bring up that well done comment, or thought. So it's going to give that to me straight away. So I don't actually need to then scroll through this list to find it, as long as I know what that keyword is. So this comment bank can essentially be as long as you like, and you're able to easily draw upon those. You can also go in and either copy them or edit those comments as well. So if you want to make any changes, you'll also note that, for example, if I use my comment here, have you thought about including some images? I really like the layout of your slides. Perhaps you can think about reading over your writing. So I can add in that and it won't change what's in my comment bank here. So that's always really helpful to know. And I can simply just tap on reply and you'll see that now I have a stream of comments there, so that when my student goes in to check, that's what they're going to see. So coming back to the grading tab up here, I can, I've just heard a Are you able to group the comment banks by subject? You're not able to group them, but what I would recommend is that if you are working in a specific subject, that if you share the bank of comments that you've got, then you'd be able to sort of use that to make it easier. So Lizette's asked, how does the pupil know you have made a comment? So there's a couple of things that obviously if the child's within that work, they'll be able to see that comment appear straight away. But equally, if you want to notify them, you'll see that if I just edit this comment here, if I use the @ symbol, I can actually go ahead and notify that person straight away. So either use the @ or the plus symbol, both of them will access it. And what that does is that then assigns it to them. So they'll actually get notified that you've left a comment on their piece of work to go on to. So Lizette, if you want to open that up, you'll actually see that you'll have a notification that I've commented on your slide there. So that's always really helpful to know. As I mentioned before, I can obviously go in and give that mark there. And you'll notice as well that that rubric comes up on the side here. So if I can't remember exactly what I put as my criteria, I can open that rubric up and you'll see that I've got those different levels here. So I can go, a new slide has not been added to the to the end of the presentation. So I'm just going to go with beginner. And this is just to show you how it works. I'm not critiquing you at all here. And then again, equally, I can leave a private comment in at the end here. So that's a really helpful way to be able to sort of give a final closing comment. I'd always recommend any comments that you want to give during the assignment, once they work on it, do it in line and then use this private comment sort of as a finish. And then you've always got that option to return the grades, return the marks if you want to as well. So I'm just going to say, please check over the rubric and see what you need to do to complete the task. And I can simply tap on post. So you'll see that I've got that private comment there and I can return it. But one of the things that I found as a teacher was that it's, often we spend so much time either writing comments or giving voice comments, but it's not the only way to be able to give feedback to our learners. So one of the things you can do, it's really worth mentioning, is using Screencastify. Now, Screencastify allows you to record your screen, so it allows you to actually go through what it is that they've done. And I'll just need to quickly set this up so that you can see. So it'll ask for permission for my microphone, and then I can tap back onto it and I can embed my webcam. So that means that my webcam would appear in the bottom of my screen. I'm just going to have that off. You can also enable drawing tools. So what that'll mean is that you can annotate on your screen there. And then simply, you've also got the option to either record a browser tab or just your webcam. So you've got lots of options there. So I can simply tap on record. There we go. And then it's going to prompt me to select my screen. So I'm just going to go with this one here and tap on share. So you'll see here, Lizette, that you haven't had a chance to quite start your task yet. So maybe you might like to start to think about setting that title for what it is that you need to complete. And remember to go back to the rubric. You'll also notice that on the side here, I've given you some comments of some things that might help you to get going with your assignment there. And then I can stop that recording. And you'll see now that this has just gone through exactly what I was showing on the screen. And you can see those annotations as they come through. I know you won't be able to hear my voice as I've done that because it now mutes you straight away, which is nice because when you used to create them, it would play automatically. And what's really nice about this is that these are automatically saved to your Google Drive, same as with any work. And you've got that option to copy the shareable link. So before this is even finished downloading, I can simply copy that link, jump back into where I'm marking and add in either in a comment. So I might simply add a new comment here, so that they'll have that to go back to, or I might like to use it as part of my private comment here as well. And what that means is that Lizette will now be able to click onto that and see that recording. It's worth noting as well that you've got the ability to snip. So that last little bit of me going up and tapping that extension, I can simply crop that out if I want to, just so it's a little bit more slick rather than sort of that slow process and it making the video longer as well. So this is a great way if you're sort of demonstrating how to use a tool to be able to do that. I'm just going to stop there and see if there are any questions that you might have. Feel free to unmute yourself or to share in the chat. I often find that during this I say that and people sort of sit there and don't ask, please do unmute yourself and ask questions. Or if you can't talk right now, please put them in the chat, because it's really helpful to sort of know if I've gone through things too quickly, or you want to, go over something again. No questions?
Should I still be able to see your screen? I can't see your screen anymore. Is that just me?
Yeah, no, I did stop it. So that's one of the problems. I'm not sure. Did you see my screencast when I was recording it? Yeah. So unfortunately, that's one of the things that tends to be a problem when I'm trying to share my screen. So what happens is that, did you see me actually tap onto Screencastify at the start?
There, and then when you went to
record my screen, it went away. Yeah. So that's just one of the problems. But what I will show you now is I'll actually play what happened when you couldn't see my screen. So you'll notice in that bottom left corner that there is different pen tools that you can use. So this is a really handy way to be able to identify any points that haven't been made attention, or highlighting great things that a child's done with their work. So you have all of those tools in as you create this video recording there. And then when you finish your video recording, it will take you to a screen that looks like this. And what you have is you've got the scissors here, so you can actually trim the sort of ending of a video or trim the start. So if the video's sort of got some excess or you've made a mistake, that you can do that as well. And what obviously you probably didn't see as well is that on the right-hand side of your screen there, once you've finished recording, is that you've got the option to copy the shareable link. And that shareable link is then put on to Classroom. So for example, if I just paste that in there, they'll then have that feedback to watch. So I might just put in my comment, please watch my feedback, what you need to fix for your assignment. And a couple of other things is that on the right-hand side of your screen here, you'll see a couple of options. So you can share this to Classroom. So maybe you're trying to teach your pupils how to get logged in for the first time, or how to use a new app. So you could actually go in, create your own little screencast like I've just done here, and then share that to Classroom directly. You could also publish it to YouTube if you wanted to. You can get the embed code. So if you're doing anything, for example, in Google Sites, then you can embed that code directly. If I wanted to send it to someone, so I could simply tap on send in Gmail, and that's going to then open up my inbox, and I can quickly pop in. So I can put that there, and I can just tap on send. I'll annoy Graham with another email. And let's just bring that one back up. I've also got the ability to download it. Now, what's quite nice is that whilst I can just simply download that video, I can also export it, export just the audio. So if you just want the voice rather than the video, and you can also export it as a GIF. So this is a nice thing to be able to sort of create a quick little tutorial of how to do something. So hopefully that's helpful there. Oh, now that I've taken you through. So essentially, the benefit of using Screencastify is that, is that ability to go in and annotate a piece of work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump back in. It's really hard to sort of go in with a blank piece of work. So I'm actually going to go in and set up a task using one from another class. So I can simply tap on reuse post. And for this one, I'm going to go into one of my other classes and use an assignment from there. Oh, we are going slow tonight. I do apologize. So usually this appears almost straight away. But it doesn't look like it. So just to sort of highlight that Screencastify option just makes it that next level easier. And I can't sort of take you through it again because obviously it's going to happen, that same thing of when I actually record my screen, that you'll lose access to it. But one of the things that I sort of wanted to highlight was just that ability to be able to easily go in and annotate over the top to explain something or to give feedback. So for example, if I just open up just go to my drive very quickly. So for example, if I go on to, let's just see if I've got something that I can use. So for example, if I was bringing up a sort of help guide, so I've got one here, I might then go and use that Screencastify option, and that will allow me to then be able to quickly go in and highlight any key parts as I go through exactly what it is that they need to do. I can also use it as a way to sort of talk through any key points within. So I might say, go and highlight the title. This is where you need to go if you're looking for how to get started. So rather than simply sending an email to someone and replying, this is what you need to do, I can actually give them that specific instruction as well. So that's why that is really helpful there. Are there any other questions that people would like me to go through or to show you?
I was just going to ask, we're several steps behind at St. Teresa's in terms of using the classroom like this, or at least most people are. There are some staff that have got more of a grip on it.
Yeah.
And my colleague Vanessa's on this as well, so maybe she can chip in. But in terms of using the Screencastify, in terms of what you've told us so far, and using your hindsight, what sorts of things would you promote? I mean, would it be good for people to trial it without the Screencastify first of all, or would you sort of suggest that they get used to using that right from the get-go?
So I think one of the benefits of Screencastify is that you don't, if you think about back to when you're in the classroom, how many times would you sit there and go through all of your pupils' work in their book after the lesson? Compared to how many of those conversations do you have in terms of giving feedback to your pupils happen person to person?
Yeah, and we try to promote the person to person, but
so that's where I always come back to Screencastify, is that it's that whole idea of being able to give that almost person to person feedback, which we can't if we just simply leave a comment on a piece of work. And I think that's the key thing to highlight, is that if I jump back into this one here, having those comments there means nothing compared to going and having that video content where I'm then highlighting the parts where Lizette hasn't put in the title, hasn't made any changes, hasn't put those photos in on that slideshow yet. Now, Lizette's just my student here, so I'm just, I'm not picking on you, but I'm just saying that, like, that's why Screencastify is that benefit there, because you've got that ability to walk through the work in a similar way that you would do having that pupil next to you.
And as far as the pupil goes, and forgive my sort of slight, I'm just learning, trying to do it quite quickly. But in terms of when you've given that feedback over Screencastify, is that child able to go back to that feedback? Does it save it in any way for them?
So in terms of where they would be able to access it?
Yeah, let's just say that you went through it with them once, and a bit like you're doing now, I'm going, yeah, okay, that sort of makes sense. And then in 10 minutes time, when this finishes or whatever, I think, I can't remember any of it. I might need to go back over the recording. So on the Screencastify, you drawing a circle around that click add to add title box could be really helpful to me, because that could be my start point. And if I'm a visual learner, that would be definitely helpful to me. So is it possible for the child, I just trying to understand where it saves that bit? Yeah.
So in my drive here, you'll notice that I have in my app data, because I'm pedantic about where everything's saved in my drive, but you'll see here that I have a Screencastify folder, and that's where all of those recordings are saved there. So you'll see that they're all saved there. So the child will always be able to actually access that. It's never deleted, and it is directly within my drive. So they'll always have access to that video feedback.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I guess you can use it as a modelling tool as well, can you? Like on a previous year's piece of work, for instance, you could bring that up and then do a sort of a...
Yep. So for example, if I open this one up here, and I'm just going to mute this because you won't be able to hear anything anyway. But this is just sort of walking through how to use Google Sites. So I've sort of gone in and demonstrated, and you'll see there I've got that pen, and I'm just about to, there we go. I'm going to highlight. So we need to put a title for our site when we set it up. You might like to put in some images here. And again, obviously jumping back into another webinar there. But that's just to sort of show you that you've always got that option to record. For another example with Screencastify, using Tool Creator. So I've actually gone through and done that in that way. So for those of you that are obviously using the distance learning site, you'll have seen that the teachers are using a similar way in Google Meet. So recording the session, but that one benefit in Screencastify is that they're sort of shorter videos, and that ability to export them not only directly through that link to Classroom, but also, for example, exporting it as a GIF as well is really helpful. So just to sort of highlight for those that maybe haven't used Screencastify or Moat, that extension that I mentioned earlier, is that you can access them all if you just simply search, for example, Screencastify extension. That will just come up, and it's that first one, and then all you need to do is just use that install option there. If you're using Classroom, one of the things that I'd recommend is the ability to use Share to Classroom. You'll see that this is another extension that I have at the top here. What that allows me to do, I'm just going to make that full screen. So that Share to Classroom option at the top there allows me to quickly select the class. So I've got Twilight Classroom here, and I can actually push this to my learners, so that will then appear for them. So I can simply tap on push, and then they are going to receive those links there as well. So that's one really helpful extension, and the same with Moat, that ability to do those voice recordings as well within Classroom. But obviously you've got like lots of different ways to be able to give feedback, but I think that's been one of the big things that sort of come through recently from the teachers, is that there's been a lot of questions in terms of teachers are spending a lot of time marking and giving feedback, because equally if we're setting work, we still need to be providing feedback to our pupils. So how do we do that in a more effective way? And that was, the big sort of reason behind tonight's webinar, is just to sort of share some of those with you. So hopefully that's been of help. If you have any questions, feel free to stick around. Otherwise, I do realise that it's almost 8 o'clock and you've probably had enough. So please feel free to leave. But thank you so much for joining tonight, and I do hope you've found it beneficial.
Can I just ask a question?
Of course.
In terms of where we are now and how you're using it now, what are the benefits, do you think, going forward for when schools are back in a more ordinary kind of way? How might you use this, and how might Leo use it going forward?
So exactly the same way. So
would it be for homework? Would you be for flipping learning more in regular classroom setting situations?
So pre-COVID, I know that a lot of the Year 4 teachers and some in Year 5 and 6 were using Classroom already for setting work. So in a similar way, being able, because if you're not using paper, if the children are using their Chromebooks to complete these tasks, then your marking and feedback is going to be provided digitally. So I think having that option does flip it in a sense, but I think it is what they've been doing so it's very much something, it's not a whole lot different, and I think that's the key thing to remember. There's nothing here that's different to what was happening prior. I think it's just that ability to sort of use tools that may have not been a huge part, but things like Screencastify for giving feedback is just that one bit easier than having to sit there and mark 30 pieces of work and give comments on.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thanks very much.
You're welcome. Take care. Stay safe.
Yeah.
Thanks, Justin.